For me, just like a personal experience, a couple of weeks ago, I missed two penalties in a game, which is something that's not very common to happen. And there was a lot of messages just came from that. And like I said, after reading some of those messages, you forget all the positive messages that I've received in the few weeks before that. So that's when I took the decision to actually delete the app off my phone and say I'm just gonna take some time away from it.
Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Matthew Chow, and I'm Chief Mental Health Officer at TELUS Health. I have the privilege and honor of interviewing Ryan Gauld from the Vancouver Whitecaps Football Club today. Thank you so much, Ryan, for joining me today. I'm going to start off by asking you what mental health means to you.
Mental health is something that kind of dictates your whole life. Your mental well-being, it plays into how you treat everyday life, and just trying to be in the best place you can be mentally, to just enjoy life.
Yeah. So that's interesting to hear from you as a high-level professional athlete. One of the best in the world at what you do. I would have thought, physical strength, dexterity, speed, those would be things that would be like super, super important to you. So why the importance of mental health?
I think they're important in our field of work, obviously to get the best out of us in training and in games, but there's so much more to life than football. So, I think being able to be at peace with yourself and be in a good place mentally is the most important thing.
Yeah. I'll zone in on two things that you mentioned. There's life outside of football. That's I think a key insight. And then that dealing with these things mentally is so important. Tell me a little bit about how you support your mental well-being and mental health.
I don't do too much. Thankfully, I've got my family and my fiance around me to always, make sure I'm in a good place. And then, whenever things are kind of overwhelming me a little bit, I've got a couple of dogs that I like to go out for a walk with, and just kind of clear my mind. So it's just kind of little things that I do to keep on top of things.
Yeah. So as a mental health doctor, I can tell you that those little things are so important, right? So mental health is sometimes about, getting support. Sometimes it's about getting therapies. Sometimes it's about getting professional help. But the day-to-day of mental health is like just what you talked about, your family, your dogs, your fiance, having a life outside of your work. Those things are just as important for mental health. So I recall you actually left home pretty young to participate, in this high-level sport. So can you tell me a little bit about what that experience was like?
So I initially moved out my parents' home at 15, just to move like 45 minutes down the road, to play football there. And then that wasn't so bad because I still got home at the weekends. So, I still got all my washing done by my mum on the weekends. And then, when I turned 18, the opportunity came to move to Portugal. So I went there by myself, which was really tough to begin with. The first few months, I would say it was really tough, but thankfully with the all the apps and stuff we've got like Zoom and Skype, it made that a little bit easier just to keep in touch with everyone. And whenever things were getting tough, I always had someone to speak to. But yeah, getting those first few months out of the way was difficult.
And since they were physically apart, I would imagine like digital technology played a pretty important role. You mentioned like different apps, Zoom and things like that.
Yeah.
So I would imagine you're on the phone a lot, video chatting, messaging and stuff.
Yeah, every night for like 3 or 4 hours just on
Wow. Yeah.
just on FaceTime and stuff, just because to begin with I was staying at the training ground. I didn't have a car, so training would finish and then it was kind of like my day was finished. So that was huge in terms of just passing time and getting through to the next day, and then just battling through it until things kind of become more regular.
Yeah. I think it's really important that you talked about like how much time you actually spend interacting with your family and your fiance when you were away. Because like 3 to 4 hours, people often when they're on their phone, they're like 30 seconds here, a minute here, watching a video there. For you to actually dedicate that kind of time to connect with families.
And also to them because they had their normal lives back at home. For them to dedicate those, that time in the evening was huge for me, and I think it played a huge part in being able to settle down there.
That's awesome, and I'm so glad that you have such a great connection with your family. So there's also sometimes like not such a great side of digital, which is some of the impacts that social media, for example, have had on folks in terms of their mental health. There's been some very high profile athletes that have spoken publicly about the effects of social media on them. What do you think about social media?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's got its pros, social media, but I'm not a huge fan of it. It's, in one hand, it's nice that everyone gets the platform to speak their mind, but when people use that in the wrong way, it can be hurtful, and it can be really tough for a lot of people to deal with. And obviously with not just football players, any kind of sports players or celebrities that are in the spotlight, they can be reached just via message any time of the day, which is one of the downsides of it to me.
Yeah.
And it's why I'm not huge on it.
Yeah, not a big fan of social media. So here's a little like psychological tidbit. It turns out that how human beings are made up in terms of our psychology, that when we see something negative, it hurts us twice as much as when we see something positive. Like it's a 2-to-1 ratio. So you basically need to see 2 positive things to make up for 1 negative thing that you might see on social media or read in the paper or what have you, right? So it kind of lends credence to your thoughts about this.
I could probably rattle off at least 10 negative messages I've received in the last maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and I could maybe only tell you 1 or 2 of the positive ones. So there's just proof that
you even remember the negative ones.
You remember the negative ones, but not so much the positive.
Right. And so you're someone that is, at the top of your field. And even in your case, you find that it's so much easier to remember the negative stuff than the positive stuff. So I guess that's why you've chosen to just not
especially
stay away from that.
For me, just like a personal experience a couple of weeks ago, I missed 2 penalties in a game, which is something that's not very common to happen. And there was a lot of messages just came from that. And like I said, after reading some of those messages, you forget all the positive messages that I've received in the few weeks before that. So that's when I took the decision to actually delete the app off my phone and say I'm just gonna take some time away from it.
Yeah. So you're the second person that I've talked to from the team today that has said that they deleted social media from the phone. And so there's a bit of a trend. I can tell you as a doctor, I've actually prescribed that to people sometimes. I've told them, like, you know what, just delete the apps off your phone, because you're doom scrolling. You're spending so much time, on negative stuff. And so even for people that are not as high profile as you, just looking at negative news all the time, that 2-to-1 ratio thing comes up again, right? Like you just focus on the negative stuff, and then you completely, blow away all the positive, even for a high level professional like yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just the like you say, it's not just the messages we receive personally. It's, I know this from my fiance saying, like, everything that comes up is all about people with perfect bodies, perfect lives, and real life's not like that. It's a different world for everyone, and I think social media kind of shows the bad side of that.
Yeah. I think your fiance has a very important message there, right? That life is not perfect. Yeah. Life is not always, bliss. It's not always good stuff. Life has ups and downs.
Yeah, absolutely.
But online, sometimes only the positive stuff might be reflected in people's like Instagram profiles and stuff, and you'll forget about the not so stuff, not the rough stuff that
Yeah.
people are going through. So speaking of that, a lot of being a professional athlete is getting through the day to day, right? Because there's the glamour, there's the glory, and then there's sometimes the grind. So can you tell me a little bit about, how do you get through the day to day, like the professional aspect of professional sport?
I think, being in the situation we're in now in this locker room's really easy in the day to day because we've got such a good group of people around us. Not just the players, all the staff, the medical staff, coaching staff, everyone in the buildings makes it a really easy place to come to. So I think this has been one of the easier periods for myself to to feel motivated in the morning, to come into training, to work hard. Like my time in Portugal, when I first went there, obviously not speaking a word of the language, and there was a little bit of anxiety, like every time I was in the locker room with the guys, wondering if they're speaking about me, what they're saying, that kind of stuff was playing on my mind. So that was a tougher period as a professional, being in that situation. But thankfully here we've got such a good group that I feel like I'm in a good place.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a real tribute to the Whitecaps organization, the type of environment that they've built here. Even for myself personally, professionally, coming into this locker room, coming into this training facility, have felt welcome. Like there's a spirit of generosity in all the folks here, in the front desk, the training staff, the coaching staff, just everybody, the players, just have been just so amazing, and I'm glad to hear that you feel that way too.
Definitely.
That this has been a positive part of your professional life. Again, I am just amazed and humbled to hear you talk about your experience in Portugal, where you're going to a locker room, you don't speak the language, you're worried, like, are they talking about me? So did you ever find out, like, what were they talking about?
I was
stuff,
actually
probably.
too scared to ask, because being in the room with like older guys and really experienced guys that have done a lot in football, and I was just an 18-year-old kid who I didn't really know my place, so I didn't actually pick up any of the phrases. Now that I speak the language, I don't remember what they were saying, but I'd like to go back and kind of listen in if I could. But
yeah, go back to and find out what they were talking about. And now you're a leader yourself, right? So what an amazing transition to go from that 18-year-old in that locker room, different country, different language, to where you are today.
Yeah, I think those experiences that I've went through have kind of helped me become the person around the club that I am. I'm always someone who's up for a laugh, so just trying to raise everyone's spirits every day has kind of been a big part for me.
Yeah, I'll bet it also adds to your credibility as a leader too, right? Because when you talk about these topics, you're talking about it with some authority because you've been there, you've experienced that.
Yeah, having those experiences, in the last 10 years is definitely, it's like I said, it's helped kind of form who I am today, and I would hope that some of the younger boys, when I'm speaking to them, they know that I've been through some pretty good experiences, and I've been in a lot of different locker rooms in my time, so I'm speaking from experience in the past, and hopefully they listen.
So that's a really neat leadership quality, I'd call that, right? Taking personal accountability. So that's something I see in mental health a lot too. It's like sometimes people, they're struggling, and then they start blaming all the stuff around them. And I mean, let me tell you, there's a lot of social injustice and stuff in the world, and there's legitimate things that people absolutely, the external factors, right? But it's interesting that you also talk about that your own personal accountability, like you're accountable for your own decisions. You made up your mind that you wanted to go to Portugal, and yet, you can still not be as hard on yourself, I guess. Like you're hard on, you're taking personal accountability without without directing harm and anger at yourself, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I'm the kind of person I'll always, look at myself before any external factors as to why I'm in the situation I'm in, or how do I, improve on something, get the best out of myself.
Yeah.
I won't look at anything external. First, I'll always look at myself and, see if there's anything I can take out.
Yeah. How do you balance that with not beating up yourself too much?
That's tough to say because I do beat myself up a little bit, but
and you won't be the only person that does that, for sure.
But I'm definitely the kind of guy that I would always take on a challenge in myself, and even if I'm being hard on myself, it forces me to work like twice as hard to get the best out of it.
Yeah. I guess it's your own like internal motivation.
Yeah.
It's your way of internally motivating yourself.
Yeah, I've got just that kind of drive inside of me to make sure I get the best out of myself.
Yeah. And for folks that are listening to this, that balance of like being personally accountable and looking at yourself first and making yourself, be the best that you can be is so important. But balancing that with like not beating up on yourself unnecessarily, not being overly negative about yourself. That's a struggle that I think a lot of human beings just deal with their whole lives even.
Yeah, I think I've experienced it with a few players that I've played with, making a mistake, they get too hung up on it and they're too harsh on themselves, and it ends up affecting not just the rest of their training session or their game, but the next couple of days that you see them. So
what do you say to a player that's going through that? Because I'm sure that you've given advice to people or helped people through that.
I've never really given any advice on it. I have been given myself, just being told to, it's the old cliche, just forget about it, the next one will be better. But when I know from experience, when you're the one who's been harsh on yourself, it's you always think, it's easy to say just forget about it, there's more to it, but really it is just move on as quickly as you can. And from a football point of view, if I do something that's that I was harsh on myself for, I make sure my next 2 or 3 actions are really simple, just to get back into the groove of things, and then just try and take it from there.
Yeah, that's good. Actually, that's good advice right there, right? Is to focus on the things that are within your control, on something simple to get yourself back into that groove. Do you think there's anything more that we can do to support, first I'll ask players' mental health, people in sport?
I think the most important thing is having a platform just having someone to speak to, because I think if you bottle everything up, it's gonna inside you're gonna explode at some point. So making sure you've got a place to speak, someone to speak to, and just kind of creating that that supportive group around players is really important.
Yeah. And what would you say about supporting the mental health of just folks out there, like folks outside of sport? What do you think could be done to help them that way?
I would say the same again. Just if there's people to talk to. I mean, it's okay not to be okay. Obviously, there's that thing out there that mental health isn't. It's easy to say to people, you'll be fine, get over it, or but it's a real problem in the world, and I think if people knew it's okay to not be okay mentally, there's people to speak to, there's places to go that are like yourself, that are there to help people get back to 100% and leading a healthy life.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're sharing that message with folks, because there is support for people now. There is help. And there's traditional ways to get it. There's digital ways to get it. TELUS Health has a lot of virtual care and digital options for people to get access to help whenever and wherever they need, so that you can talk to someone, just like as you did when you were in Portugal, talking to your family in Scotland, using those digital tools to stay in touch. We do the same thing in mental health these days as well. So let's close off with, if there was one thing that you could tell people about mental health, what would it be?
What would it be? I guess, if you have your mental health in a good place, and you're gonna get the best out of yourself. You're gonna enjoy every day that little bit more, and I think you're gonna see the best version of yourself if you're more open and you talk about what you're going through, or even if you're not a talker, like you said, the online stuff, the virtual help, you'll see a big difference in your day to day, and in the bigger picture, I'm sure you'll have a more enjoyable time on our planet.
Thanks for that amazing closing message. I'm Dr. Matthew Chow, Chief Mental Health Officer at TELUS Health, interviewing Ryan Gauld from Vancouver Whitecaps FC. Thank you so much, Ryan, for your generosity, for sharing some vulnerability and some vulnerable moments today, but also for your incredible leadership and courage. Thank you.
Thanks very much for having me.